Are power swings going to be viable in MLB The Show 23? And if they are viable, are they even preferred? This is the question I aim to answer today. I went through hundreds of swings on All-Star difficulty. I feel like this is where this is going to be the biggest problem. We saw there were down exit velos in the tech test. Let's see if we can use some statistics and just overall what we can use to actually determine whether or not a power swing is viable. Now, as you can see, I have hundreds of swings here with two different players. I used Aaron Hicks and Mike Trout. I tested it with a high-power player as well to see if there was any difference. We're going to dive deep into these statistics. I recorded every single swing. I did 100 of each type of swing, either a contact, power, or a normal swing. Let's take a deep dive in. Let's see what we can find. So as you can see in this data set, I recorded 3 different types of swings: contact, power, and normal. I took the exit velocity, the launch angle, and the timing of the swing. We're going to see how different these things really are. I was kind of surprised with the results on a few of them, but I will say this was a really interesting experiment because this kind of determines what we consider to be the meta of MLB The Show 23. Now, I do want to say the game has not officially released yet. This could change, but as of right now, whatever we find here appears to be the case, and I think this could help the average player a lot, especially when they know what to do and what the best thing to do to get the best outcomes in this game. So there might not be a lot of you that are familiar with statistics, so I'm going to try to keep it pretty basic in the explanation. The type of test we're going to be doing is called a t-test. We're also going to be doing some logistic regression. If you're not familiar with statistics, don't worry about that stuff. I'll explain it later on as we go through. But again, we're going to be looking at the exit velocities and how they compare between different swings. And then we're also going to see if there's an association between exit velocities and the launch angles. And from there, we could see how great that change actually is from each swing. So I'm completely nerding out. I think this is a really interesting thing to take a deep dive into the game. Let's go take a look. We're going to take a look at normal swings first. Let's take a dive. So the first thing we're looking at is the normal swing. Now, these averages are for normal swings only in this circumstance. Like I said, it took 100 swings. The mean exit velocity that I had with Aaron Hicks, 47 power in the game, is 95 miles an hour off of the bat. Now, my eligibility for a swing, it was a ball that was at least inside of the PCI, and there was no very early or very late timing. So earlies, lates, just earlies, and goods were included. And as long as the ball appeared to be in the PCI somewhat, or at least mostly in the PCI, it was included in as well. So I really only want to focus on the better swings that we're going to be taking. I don't really care about the outliers, you know, the jam shots and all that stuff. We're taking a look at the good swings, and with these swings, the 100 swings, we saw an average exit velocity of 95 miles an hour, and the launch angle was about 10.5 degrees. Now, the beauty of MLB The Show 23 is that the developers have told us that they are trying to model the game based on what is happening inside of actual baseball. And like, for example, we saw 95 miles an hour off the bat with a 10-degree launch angle. Here's what you would expect. I actually rounded up to 11 degrees for the launch angle because it was like 10.6 or so. But this is what you would expect on the average swing of Aaron Hicks on a normal swing. He had an 841 batting average. There's about a 71% chance he got a single, 13% chance of a double, no chance of a home run, and a less than 1% chance of a triple. Now, one thing I do want to note that I really only worry about the batting average because we all know how this game works. There is still a little bit of randomness because this is not real life. But 841 batting average with 95 miles an hour off the bat on average with an 11-degree launch angle, I do think that is something that is at least worth mentioning, and it is something that's worthwhile to add to this type of study. Now, next up, we have the contact swing side of it as well. This one was really bad. It was a lot of ground balls, a lot of weak contact. The average exit velocity was only 85 miles an hour, but it did see an uptick in the launch angle up to about 15 degrees. Let's throw this into StatCast and see what we would expect from this. So based on the averages, you actually see you're almost guaranteed to get on base from a contact swing. Your batting average would be a 983 on the average contact swing in the game. Now, for this, of course, just for Aaron Hicks, he's got like 43 contact, 47 power, but it's basically an auto single. You have an 88.5% chance of a single, 983 batting average. Now, ultimately, we know how this game works. We all want to hit homers. We want to get as many extra base hits as we can. I personally would not recommend this. Let me show you why. So now a large reason of why I'm saying this for All-Star only is I don't think this will hold up for Hall of Fame and Legend because the PCI gets too small. However, if you power swing, a power swing on a 47 power player has an average exit velocity of almost 102 miles an hour off of the bat with a launch angle of about 13 degrees. Now, I do want to say that just because it's higher does not mean it's better. We are going to look at the statistical significance of it that actually shows that the difference is meaningful and it's actually something you should consider. But let's run a quick test on this and let's see if this is actually different from what we'd see in a normal swing or a contact swing. Real quick before we go into the differences and testing the differences for significance, we see here 102 miles an hour off of the bat with a launch angle of 13 degrees off of the bat. This would be modeled for the power swing average that Aaron Hicks had in this study. As you can see, there's a batting average of 827. Now, that is a little bit down from the contact swing. So if you're heavy on the average, hear me out. You are going to be absolutely getting way more extra base hits on a power swing than you would with a contact swing. A lot of times, even if a ball gets down in the gap or something, because of the low velocity, the ball won't roll very far and could end up just being a single. Or here, if the ball gets to the wall, now we're talking double, possibly even triple, especially if the guy, let's say it's not Aaron Hicks and has like 80 speed, there's a pretty solid chance that he can come in and be an absolute menace on the base path, just getting the ball to the wall. Especially with the new fielding mechanism in this game, people might not know how to throw well. That's something to really keep in mind because if you can get a ball to the wall, you might be able to get a free triple out of it. And a power swing in this circumstance would probably be the best way to do it. Now, I'm not going to confuse you with a bunch of these weird-looking graphs and with 100 lines on it or anything like that. The biggest thing that we're worried about is the p-value. If the p-value is less than 0.05, that means that the difference between the two variables we're looking at should be considered and is something to actually show some sort of significance. So right here, we're looking at exit velocity for power and exit velocity for normal swings. The type of test we are taking takes the two averages of the exit velocities and does an analysis on them to say, are these two actually different from one another? Even though they might still show different numbers, are they actually meaningfully different? Now, the p-value is less than 0.0001, which ultimately means the exit velocity for the power swing on average is going to be much higher, significantly higher than the normal swing exit velocity. And I do think that this is something worth considering because if you are worried about the exit velocity, I was a little bit with lower power players in the tech test. It felt like the ball really just went nowhere. A lot of easy outs. If you're power swinging, even balls that are not fully squared up are still coming off the bat at 90 to 95 miles an hour, which could still be enough to get through the infield. And even then, we see the p-value here for the launch angles between power swings and normal swings for Aaron Hicks are actually not significantly different. They do have different numbers on them. However, the difference in the averages themselves do not really show any sort of significance to it. So ultimately, you could expect about the same launch angles with a much higher exit velocity from power swing, which ultimately could lead to more home runs, more gappers. I think this is something to really consider if you're playing an All-Star, especially early on in Battle Royale, where you're playing with a lot of these really low power players like an Aaron Hicks. This is something that could really elevate your game and potentially win you more games. And for those of you that are skeptical saying, oh, well, that includes all swing types, early, late, good, I actually refined the data a little bit more where it only compares the good timing swings. As you can see here, the statistical value of significance is still less than 0.05. It's way less than that. So it shows that there is still a significance, especially on the good timing swings, as good timing swings are going to be a very big factor in this year's game. They said it themselves, timing is going to be a bigger factor than any sort of PCI placement or anything like that. But this does go to show that if you are making good contact with the ball and you are able to with a power swing, even though that PCI will shrink, you are on All-Star. You'll most likely be facing subpar pitchers. This is definitely a viable option, and I would almost recommend this. I remember I started doing this at the end of the tech test, and I was putting up 6-7 runs a game, even in poor elevation stadiums like Petco Park, Yankee Stadium, and Citizens Bank Park. And ultimately, especially if you start doing this on max elevation stadiums once the game actually releases, you are going to be hitting home runs like crazy. Now, another thing to consider, which is kind of an obvious thing to consider as well, this is what is called logistical regression. So basically what the software did was it is taking two different variables, plotting both of them, and then creating a line, this is the dotted line that you see, that shows the association between the two. So obviously here we see a negative association, which means the line is sloping to the right. But this means that the higher the launch angle goes, the lower the exit velocity. Now, obviously, when I say that, that is more of a generalization. Obviously, you will still have some high launch angle with really high exit velocities just because of randomness from the game. But in general, generally speaking, the higher the launch angle you get, most likely the lower exit velocity you will get as well. So moving on to the high power player, I used Mike Trout, who has 99 power in the game right now. A really interesting finding that I had with this was that the power swing exit velocity on average was actually just a tiny bit less than the normal contact average. Now, Mike Trout in these clips that I had, he was absolutely mashed. Like almost everything was a perfect from both sides. But I do think there was a little bit of variability there for the mean in terms of exit velocity. Now, I do think for a high power player, it is not necessary to power swing. Based on the numbers here, I don't even have to run a significance test on it. We already see that the average is higher for the normal swing anyway. So my mindset with it is, why would you want to risk the size of the PCI when your result's going to be about the same anyway, and the launch angles are about the same as well? They weren't even really worth mentioning. But I do think a normal swing for a high power player is more than enough. However, in summary, I do believe a lower power player, you definitely should power swing. But ultimately, that is going to be all for today's video. I did want to share with y'all what I found, with the findings I found from that stream where I actually just tested about 600, 700 swings, just over and over and over again, trying to get those reps in. Now, I do think this is something that would make the average player a lot better, especially since a lot of people do play on All-Star difficulty, and a lot of people also play BR with low-power cards, especially early on in the year. Ultimately, I do think this would make you a better player. At least try the power swing, in my opinion. See what it does for you. See if you hit the ball better or harder, anything like that. Let me know how it works for you. The tech test is still available, by the way. If you can play offline on the tech test in the Options Explorer, it'll boot an offline game. You can only play as the Phillies and the Astros. You can pick any stadium you want, however. But test it out, see if it works for you, and grind on that game as much as you can until it actually releases to be the best player that you can be. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. There's going to be a lot more MLB The Show content coming your way. A lot of it's going to be instructional like this. So please be sure to leave a like and a comment on this video and sub to the channel. We got a lot more coming. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next one.